Now it's time to bring in our next guest, Sam McElroy, great friend of the income generation and, of course, also a very close friend to your host here. He's a partner with At Financial and At Financial Investments in Chicago, Illinois. In addition to holding several financial licenses, Sam also has a doctorate in psychology. Sam, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, psychology. Great. I'm going to put you down on the proverbial couch now. Actually, you're going to put the world down on the proverbial couch. And obviously, the 600-pound gorilla right now in the world economy, that's getting all these economists to predict maybe a synchronized economic slowdown around the world. The biggest thing is this trade war. So if you can play psychologist for President Xi and President Trump and all the people behind them, what kind of resolution do you think we might actually see in the next few months?
Oh, Dave, we need hours upon hours to really dig into that. You know, it's such a fascinating question because in a sense, you have personal, I don't know what you want to say, personalities that are starting to shape policy. But in addition to that, you have collective cultures of countries in and of themselves. So in a sense, you have psyche upon psyche upon psyche. You know, if you think about where the resolution of all of the tariff talks are going to go, part of it has to deal with the fact that I believe both sides have become somewhat entrenched. And the question really becomes, even if progress could be made, how does either side make accommodations without losing face on the global scale?
And more importantly, without losing face politically in their own country, right? That's huge. Everyone wants to save face. So, okay, let's say that we don't get a deal done anytime soon, even a mini deal. Are you in agreement with a lot of economists that that means we will slide into global recession sometime in the next 18 months or so?
Yeah, I think it's an increasing likelihood that that's the direction that we're heading. I look at it kind of like the synergistic properties of anything that's going to start moving something really big in the same direction. So it's one thing when you have something happening domestically and you start to get a slowdown and you can utilize certain monetary policies or other things to try to pull yourself out. But to the degree that we're now intertwined on a global scale, if you have every player that's starting to slow down simultaneously, it creates this compounding effect where even if one could pull itself out, it's hard for all of them to pull themselves out simultaneously. And I think that may be what we're starting to see now.
How about this mini deal they're promising by the end of the year? If this mini deal goes through, do you think that'll really make a difference? Or do you think it's only going to matter if we have more substantive deals shortly thereafter?
I think it really depends on the way that we as consumers digest and interpret the information. I doubt anything substantive is really going to be able to come in the short term. It just seems like the two sides may be further away from each other to be able to really make that happen that quickly. So the question is, if something is done, is it going to be viewed as just the tip that's going to lead to something substantial that can happen in the future? Or are we going to look at it and say, you know what, this really isn't anything to really speak of. And in a sense, we're not going to let that change the trajectory of where we think these global economies are heading. And I have a feeling that it may be that latter, that we may look at the deal that gets done and we may just say that it's not quite enough. And in a sense, if there isn't other supporting positive data that goes along with it, I don't know that it has the ability to then change the trajectory of where we're heading.
20 seconds we have left. We don't get a deal done. We do have global recession. We, as the United States, will we go into a lesser of a recession than many other parts of the world? And essentially, we have the upper hand. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that in a sense, I think that there's a lot of stuff that has been going really strongly for the U.S. economy. At the same time, I don't know that that would necessarily save people that are overly dependent in the stock market, because I think regardless of the magnitude of the recession, the psychological impact of just us knowing that we're in a recession may actually end up pulling the markets down.
Good stock market pullback. Sure, we need to leave it there for now. We take a quick commercial break. Sorry about that. You stay with us. We'll be back here with more right here on the Income Generation in just a moment. Now let's bring back in my good friend, our good friend of the income generation, Sam McElroy, partner with At Financial and At Financial Investments in Chicago, Illinois. Sam, thanks for sticking around.
Absolutely.
Let's switch subjects now because, everyone's tired of talking about the whole trade war. We've been talking about it for the last year and a half, maybe a year and a half from now. We might still be talking about it. What other things do you see economically worldwide that concern you, that point to recession? Not just here in the United States, but across the globe.
I think there's a couple of things that I'm really looking at. There was some information that came out recently by some of the global central banks that was suggesting that if you look at some of the markets like the United States and Japan, that they feel that the market or the equity market may be a little bit overvalued. And at the same time, they're talking about the spread between interest rates being too low, which is nothing new. We've been watching this for a while. But if we look at what other countries, other nations have been willing to do in terms of how low they would reduce their interest rates, even going into negative interest rate policies, I think all of that is really starting to concern me as well. Not to mention just some of the political unrest that we're starting to see that can act as a market disruptor many places throughout the world.
How about us? Do you think we'll see negative interest rates down the road if we wait long enough?
Dave, it's one of the things I'm really watching. In a sense, I feel like there's been other points in history where we had laid the groundwork and if we had to, we were going to go that way, but we really did everything we could to not have to do it. I think in a sense, charging someone to keep money in the bank just seems like an oxymoron to me. I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around it. But one of the things we saw, especially with the 2 interest rate decreases this year, is that the market and many people that are on the committee for the Fed didn't think it was enough, which means that I feel that there's a growing movement out there that may be okay with us going into negative interest rate policies. And if that is the case, then if we have to, we may do it, because I think that we've kind of prematurely used some of our ability to use interest rate policy to try to stave off the recession. So if it happens, you may see it.
So let's say we do get a mini deal done on the China trade war. And in that case, maybe that's not quite enough to keep us out of a recession. Can the Fed do something then, in your opinion, to actually avoid recession? Or do you think at this point they're for the most part out of ammunition?
Yeah, I think that by lowering interest rates at the points where they did, they may have started to prematurely use some of that ammunition. We go back to where we were at the last start of the recession, and we know that interest rates were much higher than where we are right now. So the ability to be able to utilize that type of monetary policy to try to pull us back out of an economy and stimulate some economic growth, I don't know if it's going to have the same impact this time if we try to do it.
As it turns out, the World Economic Forum happens to agree. They said that we are less equipped now, the Federal Reserve is less equipped today, as well as other central banks, to deal with a recession of sorts than they were back in 2008. So most importantly, the 1 minute we have left, what can our viewers, our income generation members, best do to be highly equipped for the next business recession?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so critical is that obviously nobody has a crystal ball, and so it's not about trying to guess or cross your fingers and speculate and hope that you get it right. I think the biggest thing is that you have to start to separate your capacity to generate income from being reliant on having market growth. And if you can do that, then it puts you in a position to make sure that you continue to cash flow positively, good, bad, or indifferent, regardless of where the economy goes.
So protect yourself. You don't have to play the stock market game. It's your choice as an investor if you choose to play it. And if you're retired or within 10 years of retirement, you should have already started making that transition from the G to the I anyway, in which case all this becomes a moot point if they're your clients and you've prepared them the way I know that you do for retirement. So, Sam, thanks so much for being on the show once again. We appreciate it.
Yep, thanks for having me, Dave.
Stay with us. We'll be right back here in a moment on The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll be right back.